A good part of such activity, too, involves ways in which people who do not have access to wage labor endeavor to capture a piece of the wages earned by those who do. This is one of a number of reasons why it's misleading to speak of a second economy, as if it were separate from the first. It's also one of the reasons why it's misleading to simply merge improvisatory survivalists with workers, as if they form the same class. Many of those who emphasize the productive element in informal improvisatory labor, of course, do so in order to defend the moral and economic virtue of the urban poor. The improvisers are not idle, they point out, but in fact highly productive. Therefore, it is implied they deserve our respect and help, not our disdain. Modern ideas of democratic citizenship have long relied on the dignity of wage labor as a kind of moral credential, authorizing social and political membership. Where large proportions of the population are left out of the world of wage labor, as they are in most African cities and in many other places as well, it is understandable that those who would make claims for social inclusion and membership should be eager to argue that the urban poor are in fact highly productive workers, and that we would see this if only we would look at them more closely. Now, work in the so-called informal sector, even at the lower survivalist end of it, is indeed usually productive in an economic sense, just as it is often integrated with or functional to the celebrated productivity of the so-called first economy. My point, however, is that even where it isn't, there is no cause for disdain, and no reason to ignore the fact that even the unproductive are both engaged in labor and entitled to social membership. The woman begging on the street may not be producing a good or selling a service, but she works all day. To say that she's not productive is not to denigrate her labor. It is instead to underline the importance and value of distribution. The current crisis reminds us that distribution is a key task, maybe even the key task, facing human societies today. The levels of production of which we are capable today are absolutely astonishing, and we have the capacity to produce far more than any of us need. Distribution is the challenge of our era. And it is a challenge that goes far beyond the distributionist remedies devised for earlier economic periods. For a new global politics of distribution today must be centrally concerned not simply with labor, as conventionally understood, but with the people I have here termed improvisers. In this perspective, it is significant that a great deal of what the improvisers actually do in a day-to-day way, in fact, has as much to do with distribution as with production. I emphasize that this is not a matter of a merely quantitative process of income distribution, but rather involves, just as production does, a set of social relations, social institutions, and social processes. The concept I propose for grasping this key fact is distributive labor. Consider the following 4 examples of survivalist improvisatory labor, examples which one might easily observe in any African city today. The first example is the windshield washer. This is the guy who comes out when your car is stopped at a red light and sloshes some dirty water on your windshield and rubs it around and hopes that before you drive away, maybe you'll give him a coin or 2. The second example is the panhandler. Stands in the street, asks for money. Familiar enough. The third example is the pickpocket. Stands in the street, doesn't ask. The fourth example, a loving mother from an impoverished rural area who comes to visit her employed son in the city, explaining to him the problems and hardships of people back home, and usually heading back home with some money and some gifts for the people who are in need. 4 examples. Now, if analyzed in conventional terms, where distributive dynamics are relegated to the background and productive labor radically separated from other sorts, we see 4 quite different sorts of activity. The window washer is vending a service. He is a self-employed member of the service industry. Some will perhaps see him as a micro-entrepreneur. The panhandler, in contrast, is unemployed, idle, and seeking charity. A pickpocket is a predator committing a crime.